So I'm here today with the very unique, powerful person. I mean, you are a champion. You make champions. You make championship teams. We'll be talking about high school football, but there's more to you. But I'm here today with Coach Mike DeFazio, a person that builds champions.
Thank you.
How you doing, Coach?
I'm great. Good to be here. Good to see you. Haven't seen you in a while, so it's been good to see you. Hope the family's great.
Yes, Coach. I bring you here because I want to dissect your brain. I mean, you are today's world when it comes to youth. That's probably one of the most complex conversations there is.
Yeah.
And I have two kids that have been into the football program, and it's just worked miraculously great for us.
Yeah.
To building families and building good kids. So I wanted you to come here today and let me know about everything that you're doing and how do you build these champions that I've seen you actually build them firsthand.
Yeah. Thank you.
Tell me a little bit about your background.
Okay.
Please.
How much time we got, right? Okay. So I grew up in Morristown, New Jersey. And when I was there, so growing up, I went to a few different schools actually. So my dad's business growing up fluctuated a lot. And so when I was young, I was in a private school, and then his business kind of went down. I ended up going to public schools for the rest of the time. And then in high school, and definitely for the better, I ended up going to Del Barton, which was such a wonderful place. I'll tell you what, between all the experiences that I had, Del Barton is probably the most formative in terms of putting me on a good path to success. So I went there, played football and baseball there. After graduating, I went to Columbia University in New York City, continued playing football and baseball there. And that was a great experience, playing, two sports in a great university. And then after that, I had a dream when I was a little kid of being a pro baseball player. So I continued to go after that. For the briefest of brief seconds, I played independent professional baseball for the New Haven Cutters. So independent pro balls, if anybody doesn't know, is it's a professional team. You get paid, but it doesn't have an organization. So it doesn't, like, if you do well there, it's not like you move up to AA. You can stay there.
Got it. How old are you at this time?
At this time, I was 23, I believe. So it was right after college, or 22 or 23. So I did that for a split second, blew out my shoulder. That was over before it even started. And then from there, I went to a grad school back at Columbia University. I got a master's in sports management, which ended up being a very expensive way of finding out I don't like to sit behind a desk for a living. And when that finished in 2009, that was right when the housing crisis happened, right? So even if I wanted to work in sports business or something, there really weren't jobs. So I had I'd spent all my money. I was living in the city, and I'm like, man, like I need a job or I got to move home. And after living in New York City for a few years by myself, I did not want to go home, and so I ended up bartending. So I got a job doing that, and I did that for almost 2 years. In my time there, a woman that I went to college with, she came into the bar one night, and we were just catching up. We hadn't seen each other in years. She played soccer at Columbia, and she had just gotten hired at KIPP, the brand new high school in New York City. And for anybody who doesn't know, KIPP is a charter network, so there are hundreds of schools across the country. It's the biggest charter network there is in the country. And they had just opened up their high school in the South Bronx. So she had gotten hired there as the athletic director. So the school hadn't even started yet. It was in its planning phases. She asked me if I was interested in coaching football, which I was. So my first year at KIPP, I was a football coach and also bartending. So I would, go from a practice, a workout after school, go to the bar, be there till like 4 or 5 in the morning,
Jeez.
Get back up, and then, often I would work odd jobs around the school just to make some more money. But yeah, so I did that. I coached football, did a winter strength program, built a weight room, and then started coaching their baseball team. So I've had a really unique experience of founding and building 2 different teams from scratch. When both teams started off in the 2009 to 2010 year, they were really like an after-school program. So for football, so our building at that time was on 137th and Broadway in Manhattan, West Harlem. We would get on a crosstown bus at 125th Street, take that across the city, transfer to another bus, and practice at Randall's Island. And we had a locker room, which was a U-Haul truck. So I used to go pick up the U-Haul in a parking lot on 125th and Lex, drive it to Randall's Island, meet the kids there. They would get their equipment out of the back of the truck, and then we'd have a practice for like 90 minutes, And at that point, it was, I don't know, 20 some kids, just an after school thing, right? It was like 2 practices a week. We had a couple of scrimmages. We finished off with one final game, which was like our homecoming. And then we got admitted full time to the Public School Athletic League, the PSAL in New York City, which is actually the biggest high school sports league in the country. Not the best, but just the biggest. And then in 2010, I got hired there full time as a PE and health teacher. So that really started my career in education right there. And, I was very lucky. I worked with some great guys, great coaches, and most of us were all in the building. But we built both programs up from after school teams with, like I said, 20 some kids. Both programs won city championships. And by the time we left with football, it was one of the better programs in the city. And it was, we had 70, 80 kids in the program at that time. So to, take something from nothing and build it into something is a really, really special experience.
Now, you're passionate with kids, right? I mean, for you to do all that work, you have to have some type of love and passion for kids.
Yeah. Oh, we were all kids. Mm-hmm. And, when I think about my childhood growing up, I was a kid who had a lot of advantages, right? Like probably the biggest one is 2 parents that are still together in a loving relationship, and they were great parents to me. We didn't always have a ton of money, but like the stuff we really, really needed, we were able to get. The other stuff, we didn't, right? The money wasn't there. But my parents were wonderful. My siblings were wonderful. And I was still a kid that needed a lot of help, right? Yeah. Despite all these different things, I was a knucklehead like a lot of kids, right? A lot of teenage boys, right? So I got into my fair share of dumb trouble, and the people that kept me on the straight and narrow that really complimented my parents were always my coaches and my teachers. And I was very lucky to have great coaches growing up, and and such a great sports experience too. So, with the exception of one baseball season growing up from youth through high school, I only had one losing season in my life. And then I went to Columbia, so in my football career prior to Columbia, had lost 3 games. Go to Columbia, triple that in one season.
Wow.
So I went from like opposite ends of the spectrum, right?
You went from hero to zero.
Literally, right? So that, was a very formative thing for me too. But back to your question about kids, I love working with kids. Like there's one, kids keep you young, right? So which I'm sure, Day tell you about, they bust my chops as much as I do them. And it's great, right? It's great to be a part of a team. It's great to see kids grow up and develop. Mm-hmm. And it's almost always in the ways that you don't think, right? Where, in the weight room, for example, right? You get a kid one day and all of a sudden 5 years later, you'll talk to him and be like, I'll never forget the day I was bench pressing and, and I didn't want to do another rep and you made me do it. Yeah. And then they talk about how that matters in other places of their life. Yes. Right. So and I love sports. I love competing. I love, sports like people, right? And teams, they're dynamic problems. Right? They're not static, and it evolves every single year. You're dealing with the complexity of the human mind, right? And the clay ball that is, right? You're dealing with emotions, you're dealing with people's fears, their doubts, their goals, all these things, right? Mm-hmm. And it's a very compelling experience. And again, just back to kids, I think about how much my coaches meant to me. And those are guys that I still talk to, right? The head coach at Del Barton, Brian Bowers, is one of my closest friends. He was my coach in high school. Guy Rick Dugan, who was, he was my freshman coach, all right? And then there's the position coach and my English teacher. He's one of my closest friends. I wouldn't like to think of where I would be without people like that in my life.
And what made him great? In your circumstance,
they cared about you. They wanted you to be great. You know, they obviously they wanted to win, but they wanted you to be your best as a person, you know? And I'll say like a guy like Dugan, the guy that I just mentioned, he is now he's in charge of a school out in Long Island. He's been a headmaster at different places for a while, but he was, so admittedly growing up, you know, I was a kid that didn't love school. You know, I like sports and girls, right?
Yep,
Which probably smart that my parents sent me to an all boys school, because if I was in high school with girls, I don't know what would have happened, right?
You would have had a football team. Right?
Exactly, right? So Coach Dugan was a guy that, like, you know, he played football and lacrosse in college, all right? And he was a total meathead, right? But in like one instance, like we'd go for a morning lift, right? And he'd be ripping you about like working harder and all that stuff, getting after it, cranking music. And then the next thing you know, you're in English class with him, right? Like he goes from wearing, you know, like a tank top and he's tatted up and everything, screaming. And next thing you know, you're in English class, he's in a shirt and tie, and he's reciting Moby Dick by heart, right? So like he was probably one of the first people that like showed me that you can be many things and be good at them. Right? And you can be a really smart guy and still be a good football player, and vice versa. You can be a good football player and you don't have to be like a knuckle dragger or a crayon eater, right? Like you can be a smart guy, and all of that's okay. And I think that's something, and probably subconsciously, when I think about that with the boys that I've coached and stuff like that, like that's what I hope that they see in me and they learn, is like, you know, you can be good at lots of things. Like you don't be a one-dimensional human being, right? Like be a great athlete, get after it, right? Be a good guy in the community, do well in your classes, right? Give yourself great opportunities. So I think it was a long-winded way of like answering your question, but you know, those people meant a lot to me and put me on a great path in my life. And football itself has given me many opportunities, right? Like I wouldn't have the friends that I would have. I never would have gone to Columbia without playing football. I mean, that's a top 5 university in the world. Not a chance I would have ever gone there without football. So some of it is also that I do feel like I owe a little bit in that.
Why is that?
That the game has given me more than I think anything else. You know, aside from obviously family, parents, right? Yeah. Like I said, it gave me my friends. It gave me my education. It gave me my professional opportunities. It gave me a sense of confidence in myself. You know, my sophomore year, so my freshman and sophomore year, I was a fullback, and I really wanted to be the tailback. And I remember going into my head coach, John Kowalik. He is the headmaster at the Potomac School down in Maryland. Another amazing guy. And I remember telling him, like, Coach, like, I want to play running back, right? And he was like, well, if you want to do that, you got to get faster. You got to get this. You got to get that. I went to our strength coach, Coach Mike Beach, who I'm still friends with to this day. I'm like, Coach, I need to get faster. And he's like, this is what you need to do. And I remember, like, every day going and sprinting the hill, doing my footwork drills, like all these different things, right? And it served as a justification for me of working hard, right? And like just because I ended up, I won the starting tailback job that next year, and I was a starting tailback my junior and senior year in high school. And that was a big thing, you know, for me in terms of just like a sense of accomplishment, right? That you can like really be proud of, right? And, you know, like when you think about it in the grand scheme of life, it's not the biggest thing, right? But like it sets the stage for other big things that you feel confident that you can achieve them through hard work, through keeping your head, through all these different things.
Talking about setting the stage. What year did you go into as head coach for Ramapo High School? 2022.
So I got hired in April of 2022.
So 2022 comes along, and obviously the tragic, the death of Coach Drew Gibbs, which was obviously, he was an icon in our football conversation throughout New Jersey.
Yeah,
obviously northern New Jersey even more, but that was a rough year for Ramapo. And as far as the future of coaching football, it didn't seem like it was going to be as good as someone like Coach Gibbs.
Yeah, for sure.
And then you pop up. Tell me about that.
At that time, I was actually I was working at Columbia University. So I was back there. I was working for the football program, and I was in charge of recruiting. I was director of player personnel, which was a great experience. I mean, I was sitting behind a desk for 15 hours a day, just staring at Twitter, my email, and a database, and I was like, all right, I definitely don't want to do this much longer. But it was, I worked for a great guy, Al Bagnoli, a Hall of Fame college football coach, and then the Ramapo job popped up. And I was like, all right, well, I know this is a great program. I'll put it, I honestly didn't expect to get a call back. I figured, because I know the long history there, I figured they were probably going to hire somebody internally.
Now, how do you put that in? Is it
I just applied online. Yeah, applied online, emailed Mike Mancino, who was the AD at the time, put in. And then I heard back, and they brought me in for interviews. So it was Principal Travis Smith, Mike Mancino, the AD, and Dr. Rui Dionisio, who was the superintendent at the time. So I went through the interview process. It was 4 rounds over the course of a month, which, I mean, like, most principals or superintendents don't even have a 4-round interview, right?
It sounds like a police job.
Seriously, right? Like, so it was, clearly a big job. And, like, the multiple rounds of the interview, lots of different people in the interview, from, coaches, alumni, boosters, etc. And so I went through the interview process. It went well. I got offered the job, and took it and went from there.
When you first start, and now you see the kids, I think in 2022, what are your thoughts? So now you have this football team. Like, do you have a plan? Do you know who you're going to pick as coaches? Like, what's going through your mind at this time?
One, so I didn't know the kid. Like, I'd seen film, but like, you watch, you're not really sure, right? So, and with the coaches, because of what had happened, and these guys, I mean, when you think about it, like the staff there, okay, all of those guys were either a former player of Drew Gibbs, all right, or a friend of Drew. So it was a very tight-knit situation, right? And the coaches, as much as the kids, were obviously devastated about what happened. So, as much as I was in a rush to put a staff together, I was also trying to be conscious and respectful of what these guys had gone through, right? And I mean, when you think about that, really, that whole situation, like, these guys, starting with Drew and the other guys, coming along and being a part of it, like, had built a really tremendous football program, right? Yeah. And Drew was only 58 when that happened. Yeah. So I'm sure, like, everybody there thought, like, well, this probably isn't ending for at least another 7 years, right? If 65 is the retirement, all right? So there was no transition plan. So like, everything that these guys had built up had been taken away from them in one day, right? In that sense of losing Coach Gibbs and not knowing what direction things were going to go.
And the way Coach Gibbs, he passed away on the field
in front of the kids, in front of the coaches, right? Like, it's not like he went home and then it happened in front of kids.
And these kids loved him. I mean, he was very, very committed to the program.
Oh, yeah.
All the kids really, really were attached to him.
Oh, yeah.
Like you said, I mean, no one really thought that he was going to leave anytime soon.
Exactly, right? And then, like, another thing, too, to consider is for kids within the Ramapo community, right? And it's definitely something that I learned in this experience, and you realize how deep it runs, right? Like, these kids in the Flow community, like, grow up saying, I'm going to play for Drew Gibbs. It's not like something where it's just like, oh, well, this is my coach, and that's that. It's like, no, like, I've been going to his football camps since I was 8 years old, right? I remember seeing the boys, right, with like Drew Gibbs football camp t-shirts from, I don't know, like 2020, 2015, right? Yeah. Like their older brothers had worn them and stuff like that, right? So this was also, kids were looking forward to an experience with a person for most of their life, right?
You're right. Yeah.
So, so there's so much about it where you got to tread lightly and walk on eggshells. Like, as much as you do want to change things and make it your own, you do need to respect what took place, right? So, in that first year, that was, a sometimes very tough balance for me, right? Because there were just things where I'm like, okay, like, yeah, I know Drew did this, and Drew is a great coach, and like that worked for him, but this is not what I would do, and I would.
Oh, so yeah, you're right.
You know what I mean?
Crazy.
So it's stuff like that, right? Yeah. And like, so you really have to think, pick and choose. Well, what am I going to change right now, right? And I remember there was a tough point in the middle of the season. We had lost 2 games, and
this is your first year,
year one, and I said to myself, I'm like, all right, like the emotion of this situation is understandably very intense and very high, right? But the emotion is going to start to take us over, and I need to find a way to redirect that, right? And so that was, which I know some people weren't happy with, understandably. Like I didn't want to make that change at that moment, but I'm like, all right, like if we're going to kind of get this back on track, we need to redirect it towards this. And that's when I made a decision to change our team motto, which kids had hung on to, understandably. And just literally only to try and bring a little bit of focus back to the task at hand, right? And and one of my messages always to the kids, and at least I tried to get across, I hope I did, was that just because I would say to them this, I'm like, you got to keep football here and Coach Gibbs here, right? So he's always with you, all right? But you got to understand, like, if you really want to honor Coach Gibbs, the best way to do that is to be good kids, take care of yourself, and play your best football, right? And in order for us to play our best football, we have to focus first and foremost on football. Yeah. Which, listen, saying that to a teenager who's highly emotional about somebody they lost and they cared about, it's tough. It doesn't always track. And I understand why some of the boys were definitely upset about that change. But, we got back on track.
Now, do you doubt yourself during this? I mean,
of course.
They say you get tension with the boys. Are you like, man, I hope I'm making the right decision? Or are you like, no, this is
yes, there's always doubt, right? Because you know what I mean? Because you're saying to yourself, there's doubt about everything, right? Yes, like, is that the right play call? Am I doing the right, whatever it may be? But this, because it was so understandably, emotional, listen, more games are lost than are won, okay? And meaning that, like, more often than not, it's one team that does something wrong versus the other team doing more right, okay? And most of those losses don't necessarily come from X's and O's strategy. It comes from a mishandling of the personalities of your group, right? And so I wanted to make sure as best as I could. Like, I know I was always going to have some people, no matter what happened, they just weren't going to like it, right? But price to pay for being in charge, you got to make a hard decision. So there was doubt, but I believed that was what the right thing was. And, quite frankly, the results spoke for themselves after that.
Now, this is your first...
This is year one.
But this is your first job as head coach in New Jersey.
In New Jersey, yeah.
Right?
Yep.
So this is like... And Ramapo High School is like an established...
Oh, yeah.
So this is like a different stage for you. Is that fair to say?
100%. The program that, we were able to build at KIPP, I mean, it was a good program, but... it wasn't the level of football that Ramapo was. Now, we ran it like it was,
correct,
but just, it just wasn't. That's the reality of the situation, right?
Yeah.
I would probably say we were, in New York City, our team was probably like a Group 1 type team. So, like, good football, just not the bigger school type football, right?
Yep.
So anyway, yes, definitely some doubts about it, but, I stuck to it. I believed in it. And we had lost 2 games. It was the first Highlands game and then the Riverdale game. Then we got back on track versus Old Tapan. And then we were really kind of, winning the rest of the year. And then we had, the tough loss versus Northern Highlands in the sectionals, where the lights went out twice. That was an interesting game.
Tell me about that horrible night. How did you feel? Because you were so close, and then you just... tell me about
that.
Is that... Do you still remember that?
Oh, of course. I mean, there were a lot of things, right? And, I heard a lot of people talk about blaming it on the lights, but listen, Highlands had to sit there the same as us, right? Like, it wasn't like they had a bubble that they went and stayed in and were nice and warmed up, right? Like, we both sat on the sidelines in the dark, right?
To the listeners, the lights, it was watching a football, I think it was fourth quarter, was it?
I think it was third quarter, because what ended up happening, they went out, there was that long delay, then they went out exactly an hour later.
Correct. And it was for a long time.
Yeah, oh yeah, because those were the old lights.
Yeah.
So you have newer lights now where, like, literally people can do from their phone. They turn on and off right away. But the older lights need to cool down and then warm back up to start on. So that's why it was, and it was also one of those things. I remember seeing Mike Mancino driving the golf cart back up to the school that you could only control from a laptop.
Wow.
So, like, when you think, like, and you're like, man, is that archaic, right? But it was what it was. It was never an issue before, I guess, and just whatever was that night. So
the lights go back on, and you end up losing.
Lights go back on. We end up losing. We had we had 2 back-to-back tough penalties. So we scored the go-ahead touchdown. Then we got a penalty. And then on the following kickoff, so we got a penalty at the end of the play, which already backed us up, okay, giving them more field space. Then the kid breaks off a long run. And then there was, I think it was a pretty questionable penalty from my recollection, but then we got a late hit penalty. So now they're at like 1st and 10 on our, 30, 25. And they score again, ties it up. We go to overtime, losing overtime. So which was, was obviously very, very tough. And, you could see how much the boys wanted it for Coach Gibbs. And it was a shame that had happened that way, particularly to Highlands again, because they had lost the year before to Highlands right after Coach Gibbs had passed.
Correct.
So that was like a double whammy of emotion.
Highland was always one of their biggest rivals.
Yeah, Highlands is a big rivalry. Yep.
Yeah. So
it was one of those things. Like as I think back on it, right? Like, so when I was at KIPP in 2017. One of my players was murdered the night before a game. He was a victim of gun violence, gang violence. He himself was not in a gang. So where he lived, I guess, in his apartment complex, his project complex.
This is in New York.
New York City, yeah. So he, there was, I guess, he was a target of something for whatever reason. He was murdered the night before a game. When we came back, people, just as a coach, people are like, what's the biggest game you've ever coached in, right? And, forget any game I coached in New Jersey, whatever championship level, the biggest game I ever coached in was Evander Childs in a regular season game versus when I was at KIPP. And it was the first game after we came back from after Tyleek when he was murdered. And, I saw a lot of what I saw in my boys at KIPP after that, in the kids at Ramapo, in the sense of just this, they'd been holding in their emotions for so long and just like wanting that they were just kind of there. They're done. And I remember in the Evander Childs game when I was at KIPP after Tyleek was murdered, we were down. I don't remember the third quarter, fourth quarter, I don't know. But there was a punt. We got the ball, fair catch, and I'm like, all right, like I'm going to go out there, like kind of like rip into guys, get them fired up and stuff like that, right? And the walk from the sideline to the numbers. And when I saw the boys' faces, like you could see, like if they were given anything but like love and reassurance, like they'd have broken. Like you could just, they were exhausted. And in that, whatever 6-second walk, I had to entirely change my approach of how I was going to talk with them about what we were going to say. And it went from me being like, all right, I'm going to get these guys fired up, to just being like, guys, like we're very close. Let's take a deep breath, right? Let it out. And like, I love you guys. I'm proud of you. Let's take this one play at a time. So much hung in the balance of that game. And it's amazing, the power of football, power of sports, right? Mm-hmm. And us winning that game almost gave the kids, the school, like permission to, I guess, smile again, right? Kind of like feel happy, right? Like, and like, because if we had lost that game, like if I had gone out there and like tried to fire them up and rip, and we'd have lost that. I'm convinced that we would have lost that game, right? Yeah. And if we had lost that game, we'd have lost that season. Yeah. And so, it was. I think the biggest thing I learned in that moment, in terms of being a head coach and being a leader, right, is like, you need to be what your people need you to be in order for them to be their best, right? Mm-hmm. And and that's tough because,
especially when it's kids.
Especially when it's kids, right?
Yeah,
the complexities of the teenage mind, right? Like, and how emotional they can be and not processing things, particularly in a situation like that. But, like you need to figure out what people need to hear in order to get them to be their best, right? So anyway, so I say that like that, going through that experience with my team at KIPP definitely helped me in terms of trying to navigate the situation at Ramapo when I took over after Coach Gibbs passing, and trying to handle some moments that were tough ones, right? So
your second year, you come back and you end up doing that whole year, becoming champion. I think you had 2 championships.
Sectional championship, North championship.
Yep.
And then tough one at the end. Aside from the last 2 hours, great season, right? So
you end up having an undefeated record.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, you were undefeated. You won every game, and it was probably one of the best years that Ramapo ever had.
Yeah.
Not just by words, but records, right? I'm sure that there was. Tell us about that, please.
Yeah. After that, the 2022 season ended, and now it's like, all right, now because when I came on, it was April, right? I was on late, right? Like, scrambling to do everything, right? Hire coaches, get workouts done, plan for the summer, all that stuff, right?
Because your second year was probably your first full year.
Full year, exactly, yes. Right? So, I'm like, all right, so I know what I'm going to do now because of what I'd done before and what I learned in college, and having that first season, just figuring out how things operate, right? So, I was able to implement the plan that I like in the off season. Really try, get the boys bought into it, and parents, community, and all that stuff. And so, yeah, we went off from that, hired some new coaches, which was good. It was a good mix up.
Now, how do you hire new coaches? Like, do you have coaches in mind? Does someone recommend coaches? How does that work?
Yeah, so great question. So, like you said before, like, it's my first time coaching in New Jersey. So, as much as I'm from New Jersey, from a football standpoint, I'm an outsider, right? Yeah. So, it was just finding new guys, like putting the advertisements out there on as many platforms as you can, and really got some great guys. Most notably was Coach Vigorito, he's now the offensive coordinator at Wayne Hills, and they're crushing it now. It's a big thing to learning in the process, right? Is how you need to get your own people in there too, as well, right? So, and that was something I was very unaware of after coming from KIPP, where we were all together from jump, right, and built something together, and obviously added guys throughout the 10 years.
That's right. This is all fresh, new coaching.
Exactly, right? Mm-hmm. So hiring the new guys in the offseason, deciding what we're going to change, what we're going to keep, from an offense, a defense, a special team standpoint. And then really more than anything, just kind of setting your culture from jump, right? And what a lot of people can make the mistake of, which I have made the mistake of myself, you can't waterboard people with your culture, right? It's got to be like a slow drip on the forehead, of just these are the things that matter most. This is important. This is how we teach it. And, this is why, right? People want to know why, understandably, right? You can't just yell at somebody. Something I used to do, right? And I believe in this. I'm sure people don't, but I do. We finish every workout in the off season with a silent stretch. It's 5 minutes, right? Now, if you just say to kids, shut up and be quiet and stretch, they're not going to listen to that. I probably wouldn't listen to it as an adult, right? Why do I have to be quiet? We just talk for a whole workout. But it's, hey guys, this is 5 minutes of discipline right now. Finish this workout, right? And the boys bought into that, right? I'm sure there were plenty of times where they were F this dude, why are we doing this, right? But they bought into it, right? And with the exception of one game, we finished every single game, right? And we, whether it was a blowout or it was a game that we were battling in. I mean, think about Northern Highlands, the first one. We were down 21-0 at halftime, came back and won 35-34, right? Yeah. That's finishing a game. The second Highlands game came down to the last drive, right? So we had a great ability to finish things out, right? So anyway, going through the whole spring, implementing the workouts, and then the summertime with the schedule and all that stuff, the camps. So, that year was a year I got to do things in many ways the way that I would want to do it, right? So and then, we get to the season and the boys did a great job. I mean, listen, at the end of the day, as a coach, we're taking educated guesses, right? And the kids make us right or they make us wrong, right? And, those guys made us right more often than not. So
every game, how does that happen? Every game you go undefeated the whole season. Is there anything that stuck out that season that are you looking at it as game by game? Like, how is that psychology behind that? I mean,
it's so when you're a head coach, right? You have to look at things from every level. You got to look at it from like the 30,000 foot view, the 300 foot view, and the 3 foot view, right? Like, don't lose what's the expression? Lose the forest for the trees or something like that, right? Like you got to look at both. You got to see big picture. You got to see small picture. You got to see small picture. How does this basic interaction, this basic practice plan, whatever it may be, how does that materialize into something better or worse, right? Like, you got, one of the best pieces of advice I ever got from a head coach was, you don't need to know everything. You need to know enough to know when it's wrong. And most importantly, you need to know how to course correct, right? So, listen, like Nick Chabbs, who was the DC at Ramapo, I didn't know the defense better than Nick, right? I didn't know the offense better than Viggs, right? But I knew when something was right or wrong and we needed to make an adjustment, right? Now, fortunately, I was very blessed with those guys. Like, they're very bright guys too, right? So they often made corrections on their own, but it's sometimes you got to turn the key a little bit, right? Just to kind of get the ship in the direction you want. So, how does that happen? I mean, you're probably the most important thing is you're managing player health and freshness, right? Because at a certain point with these kids, like you've done everything you could do over the summer and the off season, all right? Like you're probably not really getting much stronger during the season, much faster during the season, right? You've already put in all your systems. So you kind of are who you are, right? Mm-hmm. And so during the season, you keep guys healthy, keep them fresh, right? Limit the amount of foolish mistakes. Mistakes are always going to happen, right? Like a holding's always going to happen, right? But an offsides at the wrong time is going to kill you, right? That's a mental mistake. So managing those little mistakes, capitalizing on momentum where you can, and then just plain and simple getting lucky, right? Like it's not a soccer ball, it's a football. It takes funny hops, right? So luck is an enormous part of that. I mean, like look at Andrew Onderdonk, who was a senior that year. I mean, he tore a tendon in his foot, right? A ligament in his foot, right? That kid did nothing wrong aside from play hard and just, had bad luck in that situation, right? Yeah. So, and that could have happened. That could happen to anybody, right? So that's what it comes down to a lot in season, right? Is on a weekly basis, really kind of reflecting on how many reps did your kids take in the game? How many reps did your starters take in the game? How many reps are you taking in practice? When do you need to scale it back? How can you scale it back while still getting quality reps mentally and physically? So there's so much to consider.
Could you take me to one of your hardest games? You're probably down. I mean, just either game 1 or game 2 with Highlands. I think you were both down.
Game 1, we're down both.
Both, yeah. Take me to the locker room halftime. For those of us that don't hear that conversation, what do you tell the kids? Could you remember?
Yeah.
Exactly what are you yelling at them? Could you give me that emotion? Exactly what you would be saying? Could you take me back to the locker room?
Well, they were different situations, right? Mm-hmm. So game 1 versus Highlands regular season, it was 21-0, and we weren't playing really all that bad. We just blown a couple coverages and assignments, right? But the biggest thing that you could see with the team, right, was just a little bit of tightness, right? Because it was Highlands in the sense of are we going back to thinking too much about we got to win this for Coach Gibbs and all this stuff, which is understandable, right? But is that coming up front or is it staying where it's supposed to be, right? You know what I mean? And so truth be told, there wasn't a lot that I talked to them about at Highland in halftime in the first game. It was guys, we got to take a deep breath and let something go, right now.
Now, is everyone quiet in the locker room?
Yes.
You're talking.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah. So, and the message I focused on them is like that I focused on to that halftime speech was execution, and it just reaffirming to them and just asking guys, like, what does it take for you to execute? Make them verbalize it, right? And and that matters, right? Like, but I mean, more than anything though, the boys asked. They were like, Coach, we need 5 minutes. I'm like, cool, take it. So like, and I think I said that after the game when I wrote the weekly recap, being like, the part that I'm most proud of is like they righted the ship themselves, right? Like the play calling didn't change too much or anything like that, right? Like they got themselves, like they cleared the mind a little bit, and wiped off the first half and came back out and just one play at a time, right? And we made some big plays and some big moments. I remember we scored our first touchdown of the half. Then we kicked an onside kick. Casey Grusser recovered it at the sideline. We then go down and score again, right? Nehemiah Burleson had his first touchdown of the season, which was the game-tying touchdown, I believe, right? Charlie Wingfield made a ridiculous catch in the end zone to come down with it, like all these things. And I'm pretty sure Day had like a catch at the sideline, like where he like laid out toes in bounds still, right? Like things like that, right? Like, and we made big plays when we needed them. And so we came back and won that one. So that was that first one, right? So like we got over the Highlands hump in that situation, right? Yeah. So which now when you take it to the sectional game, I mean, we went into the halftime, it was 10-0, right? But amazingly, that 10-0 felt bigger than the 21-0 in the previous game, right? Like they had a great game plan. They came out, they slowed the game down. They were really stretching us at the inside linebacker position. So they did a very nice job with us with the game plan formationally, putting us in some bad spots. But again, like that, there wasn't a reason to go in and yell and stuff like that. It was, hey, like, listen, like we know the adjustments we need to make, okay? You guys know we can come back. So we had that confidence from the previous game, right? And that's what they did, right? We came back like just one drive at a time, right? And put 2 touchdowns on the board to go 14-10. That was Day scored the go-ahead touchdown, right? I remember that one because we were trying to manage the clock. I remember talking to Viggs on the headset, being like, Viggs, like, because it was getting down to the end. I'm like, Viggs, manage the clock. Don't go too fast. Don't go too fast. And then Landon hits Day. It was a bubble screen, and he catches it. And it was like in the first game, right? The first game he scored a touchdown where he dragged like 4 dudes into the end zone.
He had a lot of anger.
Oh yeah, he a little hate in the heart. So which was good. He got it out there, right? But it was the same thing. His game-winning touchdown, like he dragged and ran through like 2 or 3 people and just got the ball over the line. Like there's actually in the highlight film of the season, there's a great clip when he scores. And it's me and Coach Terz. You see the sideline, and me and Coach Terz is going berserk.
I saw it.
Insane, right?
So you're thinking you're going crazy. Us, like the whole. Like,
I can't imagine the stands.
Like people are crying. People are like going crazy. It's just like that's what football was all about. You see the players. You see the coaches. You see the parents. You see the fans. It was just
pandemonium in the best way.
I just can't believe how beautiful. I never in my wildest dreams would have ever thought when I put my kids into football in 3rd grade that his last year in high school would mean that much to him, to the coaches, to the fans. It's like every kid has that testimony.
Absolutely.
And it's just like, it was just, and you put it all together. That's what I'm saying. So you're here today because I really believe that I've seen many coaches and not everyone could do what you have done.
Thank you.
That's the crazy thing, and knowing a lot about kids and psychology and everything. I mean, it's not easy to take a program that had such a hook to their past leader, and for him to leave like the way he did, and then for you to take over, and in 2 years you actually do what many coaches would even dream of doing it. I mean, you accomplished it in 2 years.
Thank you.
That's a huge accomplishment, and leads me to my next question, which is, it has me boggled. You pretty much did something that any school would dream of doing after their second year, after they hire a coach like you.
Yeah.
If when it comes to resumes, I mean, you pretty much did exactly what you were hired to do, if not even more. How is it that 2 years into the program, you're at the top?
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're living the dream, rightfully so, and all of a sudden you shock the whole program when you said that you're not going to continue as coach next year.
Yeah.
How does that even come into play here?
It was the toughest decision I've made in my life, I think, because, you know, from a football standpoint, it was everything I could have dreamed of. It's a great place to coach. The kids are wonderful. The community's supportive. The parents are wonderful. It just became something where I couldn't see myself there long term. You know, just on a day-to-day basis. You know, and you know, I'm someone who I have limited certifications so public. It's the brilliance of public education, right? And I'm going to sound like a little bit of like an egotistical jerk when I say this, but it's to prove a point. So I was a PE teacher for 10 years in a charter school. I have 2 Ivy League degrees. I have 2 master's degrees. Somehow I'm not qualified to teach PE in a public school in New Jersey, right? And that's just a certification status, classes, right, wrong, foolish, smart. It just was what it was. And so where I saw myself fitting in the building, for me, was something that was not going to be a good fit for football long term. You know, because what I was doing for the 2 years, I was a substitute in the building. So I didn't have grading. I didn't have lesson planning, right?
Oh, that's hard. Yeah, so you're, okay.
Yeah, so, but I was also working on a much reduced salary.
Correct.
So that came down to what it was. And that was a really tough decision, but it was just like, financially, I can't do this for another year. I was in a fortunate situation where I was able to move back in with my parents. The initial intent was, okay, be there for the first few months, and then when things go full time, higher salary, move back out. That ended up being 2 years. So that was a tough thing to do. And yeah, wow. So it just ended up being where the positions that were available in the building, football might have done this, right? Because I would have been teaching a class I never taught before. I'd have been planning lessons I would never taught before, things like that, right?
Now, I would think that, again, I'm not in that world, but I would think Ramapo High School, they probably would have a big statue of you in their school. I mean, you did some great things.
Right.
I would think, and I don't know that world, but I would think, wouldn't the school do anything and everything possible they could do for you after you have come to that school and did something so great? I mean, isn't that something that the school would be fighting and advocating for you to stay there? I mean, I know you said there was something, yeah. But I mean,
the principal, Travis Smith, Glenn Stokes, the AD, yeah. They were wonderful to me, and they wanted me to stay. Like, you know, we had a lot of conversations yes. about it when I made the decision. But again, ultimately, the limitations, or I should say, the red tape within public education, it was just prohibitive for me. Got it. So it's like, just give you an example. So very often, you know, you see a lot of football coaches, especially because of how much time football takes, right? They'll be a PE teacher. They'll, you know, be in special ed. Special ed offers a lot of flexibility in terms of how many classes. Like, you'll be a lead teacher for 2 classes and then an assistant teacher for 3 classes, right?
Yeah.
So that gives you more time to like focus on things, right? Less planning. So we were considering doing the special ed route, and which initially was you take a class online, 1 class a semester. You do it when you can, right? And it was an easier certification to get, right? That certification involved, you know, changed when I was there. Now, changed for the better for special ed, for the worse for me, in the sense that it went from an online thing that you could kind of do on your own to an in-person every single week, you know. Yeah. You're a football coach, that's a very difficult thing to navigate, right? You know, so anyway, so it just was something where, from a football standpoint, community standpoint, yeah. Wonderful. From an actual in the building every single day, just not something that was feasible, sustainable long term.
Well, I spoke to many parents, many students, and for sure it was a big loss for Ramapo to have you leave. So too bad for that red tape. But I hope that no other coach goes to that.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, honestly, I mean, you have a great coach. You would think that you could do everything possible to make sure he stays there. But take me to Coach DeFazio. You have a lot of kids under your belt that you have mentored.
Mm-hmm.
What would you tell a kid today that has not been fortunate to have someone like you coach them?
Mm-hmm.
And they're probably thinking about joining football, or they already are in football and they're just not feeling that I guess that passion.
Yeah.
What do you recommend? What would you tell a kid that hasn't touched football or contemplating football, or just what would you say to that kid?
That's tough because, like, there could be so many reasons why the kid is not contemplating it, right? Like for example, like I've had kids who, just didn't want to work hard, right? So that's a different conversation. That's figuring out what kind of ticks within that kid to get him or her to work hard, right? And to stick with it, right? And to be these things. Like, I'll give you a prime example. I had a kid when I was in the city who was a good athlete, very capable kid, but very, very lazy. And he literally said in a meeting, and it was actually shocking for a teenager to kind of have this clarity of mind, because he just wasn't putting in the work. And I was like, you're done. Like everybody else is here working hhard and you're doing your own thing. That's not okay. You're not playing football anymore. The kid lost it, like crying and all this stuff. And I said to him, I'm like, why are you surprised? And he said, he's like, I want to be good. I just don't want to have to work hard to do it. Right. Yeah. So then you say to yourself, like, all right, well, what is it that's going to get this kid to work? Right. And also, like, how, because listen, if you're too much of a hard ass all the time, right, you push people away, right? Yeah. And if you're too lackadaisical or too loose, too easy, right, people will walk all over you, right? So you're walking that fine line of all the time of like, when am I a hard ass? When am I, when do you put your arm on, pat somebody on the back? When do you kick them in the butt, right? Like, and that's a tough thing to navigate sometimes with a lot of people. And so like a situation like that, this is about finding what motivates him, like what's going to get him to work, right? So, but then I've had situations where a kid is saying like, Coach, I don't know if I want to play anymore, like, because I'm not sure if I'm having fun with this anymore, So that's a situation where you take it a little different and you say like, okay, like, well, what was fun about this for you when you started, right? Mm-hmm. And why has that changed? It might be my fault for all I know. It might be he's got a bad relationship with one of the coaches. Maybe there's a kid on the team who's teasing him, bullying him, whatever it is, right? So, you try and figure that out, right? And, I've had kids have to step away, and not at Ramapo, but when I was in the city, it's South Bronx is one of the poorest districts in the country. So you have kids that like, maybe they got to go to work, right? And so like, what am I going to yell at a kid for having to work to help his family, right? So I've had situations with kids where I'm just like, listen, like, do your thing with work, but don't leave. Like, stick with this, come when you can, right? Because it's important. I like whether you play or not, like I don't really, is not my critical factor here. It's you still being a part of something you enjoy doing, but you feel like that you can't do, right? So you're just finding a different way to support somebody. Back to the original point where I said before, of like, you got to be what people need you to be, right? And the parents are, quite frankly, are a very large part of that too, right? And I've worked with a lot of kids. Most of them, fortunately, have had very positive parents in their lives, and then there are some kids who don't, unfortunately,
right.
And so, you figure out like, what do I need to be for this kid in this moment, right? And what do I need to be for the parent? Like, so I'll give you an example. When I had a kid, Shamar, who's a great kid, but, when he was younger, a little more stubborn, sometimes a little bit of a mouth on him, but a good kid. And he, one day we were getting ready to leave for a game, and, whatever it was, he was having a bad day. And, he was, being disrespectful, all this stuff. And I was just like, you're not playing today. Get off the bus. just go home. Like, we're not dealing with this on game day. 5 minutes later, mom calls me. And, man, I will never forget this. And she said, she was like, Coach, she's like, listen, she's like, this team and this school is the second parent for my son. And she's like, I work 2 jobs. She's like, the only time I know my son is safe is when he's at school and when he's with you at football. She's like, the worst parts of my day are when he leaves in the morning and when he's coming home at night, because that's the only time I know he's not safe. So she's like, listen, she's like, I'm not saying you got to play him. If he's being a problem, he doesn't have to play, but he has to stay with you. He cannot leave. You need to understand what this is for him and for me, right? And like, you want to talk about putting football in its proper place, right? And like just how much the game means to people for reasons outside of their kids' performance and stuff like that.
You never know what
right?
someone's going through.
100%, right? So the original question, what would I say to a kid? It just depends on what that kid is going through and what that kid needs. And finding out the best way to be there for them while also holding them accountable to the standard that they need to meet. Because remember, like, you still got to keep it fair for everybody else, right? Like, if people see this kid showing up 50% of the workouts,
correct, and you
right?
them,
You're like, well, why? Right? So like, and that gets back to communication, right? Like, and I'm trying to keep people all on the same page, right? Like, how are you, like, if a kid's got a really tough situation, how are you respecting that kid's privacy and allowing him to do what he needs to do while also making sure it doesn't negatively impact the team, right? Because people feel like there's different standards, right? And like, listen, you can't treat everybody the same. People aren't the same, right? Like, so, that comes down to creating standards and expectations that can be universally met for the most part and have the biggest trickle down effect, right? So, things that I talk about with the boys, like just be on time, be prepared, and communicate, right? Everybody can do that. You know what I mean? Like, be respectful of everyone, everything that we come in contact with, right? And be your best with effort and attitude and toughness, right? Like, you don't need any type of talent to do all those things well, right? So, so figuring out those expectations, the universal ones that you can hold people accountable to, and make it important to them and make it important to the group.
A lot of our guys in law enforcement, they actually do coaching.
Oh, sure, yeah.
A lot of guys. How do you manage the parents? I mean, that's got to be a conversation. How do you manage parents that, just, I don't know, sometimes they have valid reasons, not valid reasons. How do you handle that?
That's a challenging aspect to it, right? So a lot of things. One, first and foremost, you are dealing with someone's most valuable possession in their child.
Yeah.
You cannot expect them to be completely rational about it. Even the most objective, rational person is not going to be with their kid. It just is what it is, right? You know what I mean? So when you understand that, it helps you not to take things too personally when people may make comments towards you, right? One of the biggest things I learned from my principal when I was in the city, she was a great principal. And, we had, when we were building the football program, and, it was very new. So you had a lot of complaints. Well, why does my kid have to do this? Why, like, he's here for so long, all these different things, right? And, we would have meetings with parents, and, a parent would come in and just kind of blow out the lines and let me have it for a little bit. And then it was over. And I'd be sitting there, and this is when I was younger, I'm like my mid-late 20s, and I'm just like flustered. I'm fired up. And she said to me, she's like, listen, she's like, you got to understand, sometimes people just want to be heard.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Good point.
And she's like, so communicating with people ahead of time will solve a lot of these problems for you, right? And when people want to talk, listening to them will solve a lot of these problems, right? Even if you really don't make a change, very often, like, just letting people voice themselves is
good enough.
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, as you know, like, I communicated every week in and out of season all the time, kept everybody in the loop about what was happening, right? And people appreciated
That's actually huge. You're very, very communicative, very descriptive, very meticulous with each play and kids. That's very, very impressive. That's another thing.
Right.
you know, you really are, like, again, you are the perfect example how a coach should coach. I mean,
Thank
not just on the field, but off the field. I've seen you
Yeah.
do both.
Thank you.
I want to take it to parents.
Yeah.
Obviously, parenting is very important in the football, I guess, blueprint. When it comes to driving your kids to football, and you played football when you were little, right?
Yep.
Did you?
Yeah. Well, my mom didn't let it. So I played soccer my whole life.
Got it.
So my mom wouldn't let us play.
That's right.
And then we got to 8th grade, and my mom finally said yes.
Yes.
So my first football season was in 8th grade. My dad was obviously very excited. My dad played football, high school, and a little bit of college. And now my mom is the most insane football fan.
Yes,
Like-
I've seen her. Yes,
Yeah,
she goes. I've seen it. Yes.
Yeah, and people, when I was in high school, people would say to me, like, your mom is a maniac in the stands. And I'm like, really? Like, so see, like, for her to go from being like, not a chance my kid is ever playing football, to being like, she watches more football nowadays than I do. Like Saturdays and Sundays, like she's watching NFL and college all the time. She loves it, right? So anyway, sorry, I cut you off. So parents, yeah.
What do you tell your mom today, and your dad, your parents? What would you like to tell them about you and football? I guess I don't know. Is there something you would like to tell your parents about football?
One, I'm very lucky I grew up when I did, okay? Because one thing that I see nowadays with sports is a lot of specialization, right? But what you see, particularly in more affluent areas, is that, you know, if somebody's got a strength coach, they got a speed coach, you know, they got a quarterback coach, they got a running back coach, whatever, right? So you have parents who are investing a very large amount of money and time into their kids' athletic future. And whether they see it this way or not, their kid becomes an ROI. They want to see an ROI, right?
Yeah,
on their kid, right? And if there are 4 other coaches saying, you know, whatever, speed coach, strength coach, whatever it is, being like, oh yeah, your kid's the best, but the high school coach is like, yeah, he's not good enough. Well, you got 4 other people telling you you're right, and the one person is telling you you're wrong. You know, you're going to think that person's wrong, obviously, right? So I use that as an example in the sense that I was lucky that I grew up when I did, because those things didn't really happen. And I was very fortunate with my parents that they let me own my experience. And this is what I would say to parents in team meetings at the beginning of every season. Let your kid own this experience. I'm not saying don't be a part of it and all these things and you can't ever talk to me, but like allow him to own this, the good, the bad, and everything in between, right? And, you know, so like one of the rules I had, which I may probably remember, like, you know, if a parent wants to talk playing time, like, okay, but here's the thing. Your son needs to come and talk first for himself. He needs to learn to advocate for himself. He needs to learn to have a conversation for himself. He needs to learn how to talk about why he believes he is the best fit for the team. Right? That's a really important thing for a kid to learn how to do. And when it's high school, right, let's be real, it's a more low stakes environment. I know it's big at that moment at 15, 16 years old, but you learn how to have that conversation when you're a kid, having to go in and talk to your football coach, all right? Well, you know what you're going to know how to do? You're going to know how to go and talk to your boss one day about wanting a promotion, right? About how this isn't working for you right now and you want more and you want better for yourself, right? So that's why one of my rules is like, the kid's got to come and talk to me first. If after that conversation, he is still not happy, you are still not happy as a parent, we can absolutely sit down and talk, but your son needs to initiate this, all right, for himself, all right? So again, I kind of go in all the place, but like, I mean that in a sense, the best thing my parents did was they didn't force me into things. They allowed me to own the experience. You know, if I didn't want to play football, my dad wasn't going to make me play football, you know? So like he would have loved for it, but he wasn't going to make me. And yeah, like if I wanted to be good at it, it was, well, go work at it. You know, like you want this, like you got to go to the gym. Like I'm not taking it. My dad was always working, you know what I mean? So like, and my mom later on as well, right? So like I had a great experience learning how to own my time, my experience, right? And I wish that for every kid, in the sense that you have parents that are there for you and love you and like, you know, pump you up after you have a bad practice, you have a bad game, right? Whatever it may be. But they also shoot you straight and let you know. So my junior year in high school, I sprained my ankle. And that was like my first kind of like real injury. And it was a bad ankle sprain. And it got to a point where, I was fighting. And my dad said to me, and he was like, he's like, do you think you're being as tough as you can be right now? Like, he didn't sit there and like call me soft or anything. He just asked me. He's like, do you think you're being as tough? Like, do you think you can get back? And I remember the way he said that to me made me rethink, like, okay, like, can I go back and play? Like, I'm supposed to play in 2 games. Maybe I can play in this game, right? Like, right. So like he positively challenged me, and was still supportive, right? Mm-hmm. So like stuff like that. And my mom was the daughter of a coach. So my grandfather, he's a Hall of Fame high school soccer coach in New Jersey. So he, what do you go, like 84-7 or something like that. Really? A bunch. Yeah. So he coached at Steinert High School down in by Trenton.
So it's in your blood.
Yes, it is. Yeah, he was a PE and health teacher. My grandmother, his wife, was a PE health teacher. Mm-hmm. So yes, in a lot of ways it is. Yeah. So I think if I would say something to my parents, would just be, thank you for allowing me to have the sports experience that I did, and not taking anything away from me in that situation.
Good. What was your highest moment, if you had any, that you remember while you were being a coach?
2015, when I was coaching in New York City. 2016, excuse me. That was a tough year for us. So the program we built at KIPP. So we started off, first season winning record. Then we move up to varsity. And we have no seniors at that point, right? So we're all underclassmen, and we got our asses kicked, right? But we got better each game. So like the first game was a blowout. Second game was a blowout, but less so. And the score just, got a little bit tighter every single game till finally we won a game at the end, right? Then the next season was our first year with all 4 grades. Mm-hmm. Went to the playoffs for the first time. All right, had a winning season, went to the playoffs for the first time. The next year after that, had a down season. Next year after that was 2014. We had our best season to date. We went 9-3. We lost in the semifinals, right? And 2015, we were 500. Now, 2016, we're like, all right, like, this senior class was challenging, right? They came in, they did well as freshmen, but then they just didn't stick with it and all this stuff. So that 2016 season, we weren't really sure what to expect. We knew we had capable kids, but like, just as a team, we didn't have it, right? And so much I could have done better in retrospect, right? So in that season, we were playing a team, Eagle Academy 3, and they were one of the best teams in the city at that point. And we're at a point now where a lot of our younger guys are playing, our older guys weren't. We were undersized, outmatched, outgunned, everything you could be, right? And our guys played so hard. Like, I remember being over the headset, Pete O'Byrne, who's one of my close friends that I coach with, he was the offensive coordinator. There was a play, Jeffrey out in Curie, and Jeffrey was, I don't know, he's in the Marines now. He was, I don't know, 5'8", $150, something like that, a small kid, right? And their running back was a monster. Like, this kid just, like, he was bigger than our linemen, right? And like, just stiff-arming dudes, all this stuff. And I will never forget watching Jeffrey, who was a corner, like, come downhill and light this kid up, right? Mm-hmm. And like that hit, and on the headset with Pete, and he was like, he's like, you really have to admire the courage in our kids right now, playing as hard as they are. And we lost the game, but like, we played so hard that the other fans and the other coaches like came over to us after the game and were like, guys, like, we know we beat you, but you guys are tough, That
was awesome.
You know what I mean? So I think that might have been one of my favorite moments as a coach. And there are so many. I'm sure there are others, right? But like, just in terms of like being proud, right? Yeah. Like, because that was a reflection of our team personality, our culture. It was a reflection of all of us as coaches, right? And despite the fact that, like, yeah, we were having a losing season and we were getting our asses kicked, like, nobody was quitting.
Yeah.
Right? And so that was a really
awesome,
a really unique moment to, like, to walk off a field after losing, but like still feeling like this, right? And again, like I'll never say winning is not important. Barring anything, I say this, barring anything extreme, winning is what matters most, because the benefits you get from winning so far exceed outweigh, like, you know what I mean? But, you know, that was a situation where, like, it just, the win was not the important part. It was out of our reach. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It was about these young men not giving an inch to someone else, right?
Today you are now in Fair Lawn.
Mm-hmm.
You are no longer a head coach, and I know you said you love to be a head coach. That's something you love to do. What are your future plans? Is there anything that's brewing? Is there something that?
Yeah, nothing brewing right now. The kids at the job I have at Fair Lawn is wonderful. It's a really, really nice place. Great school, great community. It's a very good high school. And the superintendent, Dr. Rui Dionisio, who hired me at Ramapo, he's the superintendent here. And after I stepped down at Fair Lawn, he ended up creating this position. I reached out to him, was interviewed for it, ended up getting it, fortunately. And it's it's another opportunity to build something again.
Got it.
You know, and so I'm not doing football, which sometimes you feel like you're dying a slow death. I'm like watching these games. I'm like, oh God, yes. Like, you know. So, but like, so many unique and special things about this opportunity right now. So, I mean, when I was at KIPP, you know, and we were building something from nothing, like all of us were young guys. So, I mean, it was baptism by fire, right? Like we're trying stuff out, making lots of mistakes, figuring it out, like, you know, so much trial and error. So now to be able to come back and build something again with all of this previous knowledge has been really, really great, right? And like, you know, when you're a head football coach, especially at the high school level, you're dealing with so much, right? You don't even realize how little brain space you have, right? Because there's so much there. So not having football right now has freed me up to learn and pursue some other things. Like I look back at, you know, my time at Ramapo. Did we do a good job in the weight room? Yeah, kids got stronger. We put up some good numbers and stuff. But like, I wasn't as the best as I could have been. Now, learning that now after being at Fair Lawn and just focusing on weight training, like, oh man, like there's so many other things I could have done and could have done better, right? Like it was never bad, but it wasn't as good as it could have been, right? So I say that to myself, like, okay, you know, I go back and be a head football coach again and I'm running a weight room again. Now I know I can do certain things better, right? And make it easier, better for everybody, right? My first time really coaching girls, which I've never done before. You know, like I've taught girls in class and stuff like that. But, you know, coaching a girls team is a unique thing, right? Like, you know, I'm not going to yell at girls the same way I yell at boys. You don't need to, right? I'm sure you, with your daughter versus the boys, right? Girls listen a lot better, right? So, you know, girls come in, they have their Stanley water bottles. They're all organized. Everything is together, right? They listen very well. And the thing you work on with them is like, hey, like don't be afraid to like get jacked right now. Don't be afraid to throw some weight around. So that's been a really fun thing working with the girls teams, of like seeing girls buy into it and get excited about working out and stuff like that, right? And you know, then you got the boys, right? And like they show up with a Poland Spring bottle they've been drinking out of for a month for some reason, right? Like, you know, like it's like, dude, just get a new bottle, right? So but like, and they're doing great, right? So like it's learning all these different things. And also, quite frankly, like I've always been the head coach of the team that I'm training. I'm not right now. So there's a totally different type of communication and motivation that you need to have with kids that aren't like your players per se, right? So like, you know, if I got my own team and a kid's not doing well in the weight room, I can just easily say to him like, yo, dude, like you keep this up, you ain't gonna play. That'll straighten them up real quick, right? Your playing time is their most valuable asset, right? As a coach. So now you got to approach it a little differently with kids. Like how am I getting a kid motivated to train and come in and do this? Knowing that I don't have that leverage of playing time over a kid, right? So it's been a tremendous learning experience. Building something again from nothing is always a great experience. I can't encourage, like I say this to people all the time. If you have an opportunity to build something, like do it.
Yeah.
You'll learn more from doing that, and it'll be the most invigorating experience, right? Because it's yours, right? It's truly a reflection of you, right? So you're going to put a lot into that, right? So what's on the horizon? I don't know. I know right here, I'm very grateful for the job. I love it. The kids are wonderful. The coaches are great. People in the building are great. Great town, great community, right?
Yes, it is.
So I'm really enjoying it, and we'll see. I always see myself going back to football in some way. Who knows? Maybe it's in a different capacity.
Would you like to say anything to the Ramapo High School community, which obviously I told some of the guys and the families that we're going to interview you, very excited. Anything you would like to say to the high school community that misses you so much?
Well, to the boys that I coached, I loved coaching you. It was really special. And we spoke about it earlier, right? With the kids growing up, like, they grew up wanting to play for Drew Gibbs, right? And knowing certain things were part of their experience that they wanted to have, right? So I think the biggest thing that I could say to the boys specifically is just thank you for being open and willing to accept me as a new coach, accept the changes that I brought, and just to welcome me and give your best effort, and just we had a great time, great personalities with the kids, so for them, just I saying to the camera, I miss you guys. I love you. I loved coaching you. And hopefully that if I go back to football, I get another group like you guys, right? To the parents, yourself and others, similar thing. Thank you for welcoming me. Just like the boys, right? Being open to something new, right? Because you guys as well, you're, like you said before, the parents are as much a part of the experience as the kids, And so being open to a new person coming in and being a leader for your sons, right? So that was huge. And then just the kids in general at Ramapo, just we're nice kids, So
Coach DeFazio, what would you like to be remembered for?
I maximized myself and my abilities, and in the process of that, made a positive impact on people. When you talk about what your goals as a head coach, as a football program, or what you really want to do, you want to create a high-level championship program that positively impacts everybody that comes in touch with it, right? So I would say that's, want to be remembered for. I want to be remembered for, being a great person, a great coach, and somebody who positively impacted not just his players, but the greater community.
Would you have any picks for this year for high school champion, or anything with this year?
All right, so let's go through all because I'm broadcasting games now,
Yes.
right? So I'm seeing a lot of them. Okay.
So now, wait. So tell us what you're doing. So you're broadcasting games.
Yeah.
Tell me about that, please.
So the super
that's huge.
It's awesome too. It's quite frankly given me a profound respect for the guys that do this for a living, right? So the Super Football Conference created a network. Excuse me, and I'm one of the football analysts. So
no shit.
Yeah, so I get paired up with a play-by-play guy. So he'll say something, whatever, number 15 throws a pass to number 12, touchdown, whatever, and then I kind of fill in the blanks, hey, that was a drop back pass, it was a smash concept, whatever it was.
So he
right?
can mention it. Beautiful.
He gives this is what actually happened, and then I'll flesh it out, being okay, that kid, whatever, it was a run play or something, hey, that play, that's a power read, right?
And he's the one that says it.
Yeah, so he says it, and then I fill in, and I give my take on it. So it's a lot of fun. We compliment each other, riff off each other.
Awesome.
So I'm doing those games, which is, again, just my first time doing it. I was very lucky that I was paired up with a good guy. I was a mumbling moron for the first half, right? Because, I'm just kind of watching it as a coach, right? And just looking at it, and then I'm I got to say something, right? So, there was one point where he went on this big rant, and it was great. And then he was like, Coach, what do you think? And I'm like, awesome. And he's like, thanks, like great contribution, dude. So, but anyway, so it's been fun to do, seeing all these different programs, from public to private, all that stuff.
Is there anything we should be looking out for as far as what you're doing with?
Just the Super Football Conference Network. Beautiful. So if there are people that love high school football and can't always make the game, subscribe to the Super Football Conference Network.
Got it.
And it's because they do a great job. There are 4 games every single weekend. We're getting towards the end now because playoffs are coming up, so it's going to be a little bit more limited. But yeah, definitely subscribe to it because they're doing a great job. So now in terms of championships, well, I think it's going to be Bosco and Bergen again. What's going to happen? I don't know because Bosco just beat Bergen and Bosco's undefeated and Bosco's having a great season. They went down to Texas, first time a high school team from New Jersey has played a team in Texas. They won that game versus Melissa High School and they just beat Bergen. So, they're 6-0 right now. They're number 1 in the state. However, the last time Bosco beat Bergen during the regular season, Bergen destroyed them in the championship.
Really?
Yes. So, so I anticipate. Do I think that's going to happen? I don't know. I think Bosco's a little bit different of a team right now, but I do anticipate a Bergen Bosco championship at the top level. Mm-hmm. At the level below, I think you're going to see DePaul versus Red Bank Catholic in the championship.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. So DePaul's phenomenal, right? But Red Bank Catholic at this point is 6-0 on the year. And amazingly, they're 6-0. Their starting quarterback and their starting running back are both freshmen. So they have a bright future there, more than likely, right? In the public, so now with the publics, this is where it gets interesting, right? So because we've started doing the North versus South championship, right? Started in 2022. The South is currently leading that 7-3 over the North, all right? Mm-hmm. And now probably the biggest reason why is that in the North, you have so many parochials in a concentrated area, right? So a lot of the best kids go to those schools, right? So the South doesn't really have that as much. Like they have private schools, obviously, but not like we do up here. So the South, from a public standpoint, is doing better than the North, all right?
Got it.
So Group 5, maybe you'll see I believe it's Middletown again, and they're defeated. Group 4 is the best division, and that'll be an interesting one because Winslow is down there, and Winslow won it last year, and they are very, very good. But the North has some very good teams. You got Ramapo, you got Highlands, you got Phillipsburg, right? So you got a lot of really quality teams up here. So it'll be interesting to see, who ends up making it to the end versus the South and how do they do. Group 3, I think it's going to be Old Tapan again. Brian Dunn, the head coach at Old Tapan, is unbelievable. He won it last year. That was his 5th. I don't think that Group 3 is doing, down south is doing as well as he is. He's unbelievable. So he goes right from football and right into girls basketball.
Wow.
And wins championships there. He's one of the most underrated coaches in the state, unquestionably.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, who would you name the best coach today if you had to pick one?
Well, I think right now you're probably going to go with Vito Campanelli. He's won 4 championships in a row at the highest level. He plays a national schedule, wins all those games, right? So, you got to give Vito the credit where it's due in terms of winning that last one, right? But, listen, Dan Sabella is an unbelievable coach. Seton Hall is struggling right now, but Billy Fitzgerald is an incredible coach there, right? So, there aren't too many bad ones, at least not there in that level. I don't want to say bad ones in public because that's not the case. It's just different. So I think Vito, you got to give that credit right there for him. 4 in a row, potentially a 5th, So, yeah. So I think you got to give it to Vito on that one. And Group 2 and Group 1, I'm not sure about Group 2 at this point. But Group 1, I think Glassboro down in South Jersey is still just crushing it. Yeah. But anything can happen, right? Like we talked about earlier, things you got to manage in season, just simply getting lucky, right? Let's be real. If Landon DePrima goes down in 2020, it just is what it is, right? And it's no reflection on the kids behind him, but Landon DePrima had the best quarterback season ever in Ramapo history.
He was playing like an NFL player.
It was insane.
At some point,
right?
There was some drives he was just so calm. He reminded me of that quarterback. I forgot what it was in the NFL. It was just a calm.
Yeah, ice in his veins, unflappable.
I was
right?
just shocked by that. Yeah.
And it's incredible, right? And you had the combination of him and Zach, right?
Yeah,
and Zach, like the two of them, put up some of the best numbers in Ramapo history, right? Then you had Brandon, you had Charlie Wingfield, you had all these guys complimenting it. You had, you know what I mean?
It's a beautiful team.
Yeah,
they all had their piece.
Exactly, right? And probably the most important part with that was that not only did guys know their role, but they embraced it. Right? Yeah. There weren't really many conversations that year about throw me the ball more, get more carries, more playing time. Guys were bought in for the sake of the team. They believed in it, right? Which is a great reflection of the guys, right? In terms of being unselfish, right? And I recently heard a quote, it was in a movie or something. It's imagine the cause being so important that credit is not.
Correct.
Right. And that was a real good reflection of that team. Right. So, but anyway, so, where we finish, I'm not sure. So, but best coach, I think you got to give it to Vito right now.
Awesome.
And, best team, we'll find out.
Mm-hmm. Coach, it was a pleasure.
Likewise. It's great to be here
today. And I want you to come back and we can have a better conversation.
Awesome.
When it comes to the conclusion of what happens this year. Maybe your picks are right.